Hello everyone and welcome once again to the vast and ominous comic book vault. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Dan.
And today Dan's here to talk Venom with me. This is going to be the end of the Rick Remender run on Venom. Are you ready to cry?
I have already cried.
That's sad, Dan.
No, I'm just kidding. I was really sad after the last issue, though.
Yeah, I kind of was too. So today we're going to talk about issues 15 through 22, and we're doing that many mostly just because that's after Circle of 4, which we reviewed together, and that includes all the Savage 6 stuff. But there's an arc before Savage 6 that isn't named or anything. And by the way, Dan's not on camera today because he didn't have access to his webcam, so he's going to appear in audio only.
Sorry, guys.
But that's okay. So you'll be able to see more of the panels. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump right into this. Dan, this is a little weird reviewing this like this just because it's a little lopsided. But I couldn't see just reviewing Savage 6 by itself because of the stuff leading up to it. We talked before about how neither of us really cared much for Circle of 4, and I think Circle of 4 kind of hurt this a little bit.
I think it did, too. I think Remender having to tie into events generally hurt his run on this book overall. I feel like this kind of story that is overarching through his entire run could have been told in maybe about 12 issues if he didn't have to tie into events and have those interrupt the story he was doing.
Yeah, that's totally fair. It takes 22, and more than 22, because Circle of 4 is a bunch of extra issues in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And when you get to the end of it and you get the big reveal, and as usual, we're of course doing spoilers, so if you don't want to know what happens, don't listen to this video. But when you get to the end and you find out who the Crime Master really is and everything, it's not bad. It just feels a bit underwhelming for 22 issues.
Really? You think so?
I honestly, I think so. Now, maybe less so for me because you know Spider-Man as well as you do, but I thought it was a bit weird that we were calling all the way back to something that happened in Amazing number 11.
I don't know. The fanboy in me thought that was really cool, and
that's fair. It just didn't mean anything to me because, well, it didn't mean. I'm not saying it didn't mean anything. It was set up really well. There's a place where Betty even talks about her brother before we even know that that's who it is.
Right. And when I was going back reading this, the whole thing where they reveal towards the end where, like, Jack-o'-lantern thought that the Crime Master was his son and they had this, like, weird, twisted relationship, there was, like, little hints to that throughout, and I thought that was cool foreshadowing.
You mean that he thought the Crime Master was his father?
Right, yeah.
You said his son. I just wanted to make sure that.
Oh yeah.
But no, that's okay. Yeah, no, you're right. And I think I'm not saying that it wasn't set up well. I'm not saying that it wasn't well handled. I'm saying that it seemed like a bit of a weird thing, just taking as long as it did, like you said. That's all I mean. I don't know.
Yeah.
I almost would have expected something bigger at the end of something that took this long. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I don't know, like...
That's a very vague criticism. It's almost not even a criticism. It's more of just a taste issue for me. I'm not used to that sort of reveal in something that isn't just like 8-10 issues and then we move on.
Yeah, I don't know, like... So, like, going back and... Because I've read that stuff so many times, like... The way that they incorporated, like, him into the mythos and, like, how Remender fit that character into what he was doing thematically with Betty and Flash... I just thought it was really well done. I mean, if you go back to that issue, like, that, when everyone thinks Bennett dies, that's the thing that ruins Betty and Peter's relationship, and that's why they are just friends now and didn't continue dating, and, you know, that's why Gwen Stacy and Mary Jane happened. So, I
forgot about that, okay.
So I thought it was really interesting that this story is all about family, and Flash sort of is... He sort of takes everyone in his family out of his life because of this whole Venom thing. And then to see the motivation behind the villain wanting to bring his family together, it was really cool. And it was like, he set it up so that the Crime Master was the flip side of what he was doing with Flash's character thematically. I thought that was really cool.
I also kind of enjoyed, and I don't know if this was on purpose or if I'm reading too much into it, but I actually really enjoyed how super, super over the top he was once he revealed who he was. Where he would say things like, no, don't call me my real name when I put my mask on. I'm Crime Master, even though you know who I am and I'm your brother. It was almost like, because, and maybe this makes no sense, but it was almost like, because he's a character that was killed so long ago, he's like a total throwback to that time period.
Yeah. I totally agree. And, I think
it doesn't hurt the drama at all, but I thought it was funny in a really cool way. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's what I like about this book, generally, is the tone of it. I mean, it is really dark and gritty at times because this is sort of a street-level, soldiery kind of book. And you get those little moments of comic relief where Remender sort of pokes fun at comic books, and that's really fun. I really like that about it.
Yeah, well, and it has to be rough the way it is, and you're right. I mean, there's certainly plenty of comedy, but I think that it's got to be as rough as it is because Flash is like the rougher version of Peter Parker, the way he's played, and it's almost like it's merely a what if scenario. It's like, what if Peter Parker was an alcoholic? Go.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what it's like, and not just what if he was an alcoholic, but what if his parents weren't, like what if he was brought up by an alcoholic and then had to be like that? I mean, I think it mirrors Peter Parker really well too, and I'm glad that Peter Parker appears in this because I think that and he doesn't just show up. I mean, he has things to do, but I think that it helps. That kind of keeping him around in the background reminds us of how similar and yet how not similar at all their backgrounds and the way they've lived their lives are. I think it's really interesting, to look at how Flash treats people even now, even not being the high school bully anymore, versus the way Peter Parker treats people, and then compare their upbringings.
Yeah, exactly. And the scenes with them in the cafe where they're sort of trying to feel each other out as to what's going on in each other's lives, and they're both lying to each other, and us being the fans knowing what they're keeping from each other, and they're like almost the exact same situations.
Those are really funny.
Yeah, it is. It's funny, and it's really cool. I thought those scenes were some of my favorite scenes in the entire run.
I think Remender has a fantastic idea of what to do with B-level and C-level villains and how to make them feel mainstream.
Yeah, I mean, in this arc, he adds an entire, mythos to the Crime Master mantle, which, I mean, who would have ever thought to do that? He was like a villain that showed up once or twice in, the Steve Ditko era of Spider-Man,
Yeah. Well, and I guess, and again, that's a character I don't know that well. I guess the reveal of who he really is a lot cooler because you never knew.
Right, because then it calls into question, was he the Crime Master way back in the day, too? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And probably because, obviously all those issues are supposed to happen within just a few years, so,
right.
He says that he was pulled because there's supposed to be a Crime Master for every generation, so I would assume so.
Right, yeah.
Because he's still of Peter Parker's generation. He's not much older than that.
Yeah, and I don't know, I just found that to be really cool how Remender took those aspects from the past and sort of tied them in and updated them and made them fresh. And that's generally what he did with this book in general for me. I mean, Venom's a character I never really cared to see in a book by himself.
No, me neither. I don't think anybody else did.
Yeah, and Eddie Brock was always sort of pitched as the darker version of Spider-Man when he's by himself, and Remender actually took that concept and did it well with Flash Thompson.
I should mention that to anybody that's been reading this and has the issue and didn't notice that he has a really great full-page letter saying bye to the fans and of this. Not that he's leaving Marvel. By the way, he's doing Captain America, which I'm really excited about. Yeah, he's about to start that for Marvel now. But anyway, he writes this great letter, not only saying bye to the book, but also talking about what he was thinking when he started, and the fact that he was really unsure if he even wanted to do this book because Venom, like you just said, is a character that he never saw as a good solo character. And then as soon as he realized that Marvel wanted it to be Flash Thompson, he knew just what to do with that.
Yeah, I really thought that I had the same reaction to you with the letter. I thought it was really insightful and it sort of changed my perspective and like looking back on the early issues and just appreciating how good they were for a guy that didn't really have a pitch for this when he got the job.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that you and I both said, because we talked a lot about this when it started, was that we were really surprised that Venom was being taken in a traditional superhero direction, because I don't think anybody expected to pick this up and see a superhero book so much as an anti-hero book, and he kind of becomes the anti-hero in certain ways. I mean, you can certainly make that argument, and of course he goes rogue a lot, and he kind of steals the suit from the Avengers and stuff like that. But he still more or less has the traditional superhero thing going on behind him, and then he sort of screws that up, which I think has a lot to do with his arc. But anyway, I like that he has his own rogues gallery.
Yeah, it's awesome. And they sort of...
But they're awesome.
Yeah, each of them sort of mirror a Spider-Man rogue in his gallery, too, which I thought was really cool.
Oh, that's a really good point. I mean, the Jack-o'-lantern, of course, is his Green Goblin, I would say, is probably what you're thinking.
And then you got Crime Master, who's sort of his Kingpin, and Kingpin was a huge character in Spider-Man early on before he got, taken over to Daredevil, and where he appeared there majoritively later.
Absolutely. Even though he's also is in this, but
you're right, yeah. I don't know. I just really appreciate that because when you see in a lot of these other books, you see, I sort of expected Venom to be fighting like Marvel Universe villains. Like they do that a lot in some of the smaller books where they'll just take, Dr. Doom or something and have him against Venom or whatever. And I just really appreciated that Remender just took these villains that existed already but no one was doing anything with and made them cool. I mean,
definitely. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just never thought that the human fly would be creepy, you know what I mean?
And he very definitively gave Venom an arch nemesis.
Yeah, in Crime Master and Jack-o'-lantern, I think. It's sort of like his Doc Ock and Green Goblin kind of thing.
Yeah.
You can dispute who's his greatest enemy.
Just from the first issue, I found myself going, because I could kind of see what was going on, I was like, wow, he just took Jack-o'-lantern and, made him an A-list villain. What the heck am I reading?
Yeah, and I thought that was really sort of cool at the end where they're taking Jack-o'-lantern to prison, and they're like, where should we put him? And they're like, oh, with all the other B-listers, and Jack-o'-lantern's going to get out because he's that villain.
Because he's not anymore. It's like the Marvel Universe didn't get the memo.
Yeah.
We should start talking a bit more specifically about this and any criticisms that we have. How do you feel about how Eddie Brock is handled once he comes in and for people that haven't read this, when Eddie Brock comes in and decides that he's going to kill all the symbiotes? Because remember, after Spider Island, he lost the well, I guess that wasn't even really a symbiote, right? But he was anti-Venom, and he lost all that, and now he's on a new crusade for God, like he was with anti-Venom, except it's kill all the symbiotes. And then he comes up against Venom, and the Crime Master gets a hold of him, and he ends up becoming, getting yet another symbiote, and now he's Toxin. What did you think of all that?
I thought that Remender sort of gave Eddie Brock a purpose, which he hadn't had basically since he got out of the Venom costume, really. I thought that the premise of him being the symbiote hunter was really cool, and I kind of wish they took that a little bit longer. Like, I thought maybe Eddie Brock would have been the villain for an arc, and I thought that would have been really cool.
Yeah.
But I thought it was sort of cool at the end where, well, not cool. It was interesting when Eddie Brock sort of got burned and everything, and it's sort of hinting at a new direction they're going to take with the character. And I'm glad that
he's just gone after. You're like, what happened?
Right, and I think that's telling of things that are planned for the character, and I'm just glad that Eddie Brock is going to have something to do again.
Me too. Eddie Brock can't get a freaking break, man.
Oh, we cannot.
The only thing is, and maybe this is just because, I've read too many comics over the years, so I'm used to formula. I kind of want Eddie Brock to have, like, in established status quo for a while.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just me, but I mean, like, he's been in limbo for years now.
Mm-hmm. Nobody seems to know what to do with him, really.
And I just wish he could have, like, a new definitive mantle, you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
Like Renee Montoya got to be the Question for a few years. Like, I love to see something like that with Venom, where, I mean, not so much, not Venom, but Eddie Brock, not so much necessarily that maybe he gets, like, somebody else's mantle, but just, like, because I think that they thought that Anti-Venom was that for a while, but then it was kind of a one-trick pony. I mean, Anti-Venom was a cool idea, and I actually really liked it, but it wasn't something where, like, you could give him, where, like, you could have him come in as a villain all the time because he wasn't really bad at that point. So, but you wouldn't want to see him in his own book. He got a mini, but that couldn't have continued. So,
right. I mean, they were sort of trying to do the thing with him that they did in the 90s where they tried to make him an anti-hero and have it make more sense than it did in the 90s when he was Venom.
And it did.
Yeah, it did, but I still wasn't interested,
Okay.
I don't know. Maybe it had to do with the fact that I didn't really care for the mini they did with him, but I don't know.
Well, we don't agree on that. I like the mini.
Oh, okay. But one of the other characters that I think is worth talking about that we haven't really touched on a ton is Betty, and I think that this is as much her story as it is Flash's story.
Sure, yeah.
The way that she's left at the end of the story, and she even has an arc that's just as big as Flash's in the book, I think, where she's sort of realizing that the men that are in her life are sort of doing damage to her, and she's always trying to act like this really strong lady, and taking the steps to making that sort of a reality, because, like, at the end when Crime Master's sort of talking to her, and he's like, yeah, you sort of use that as a mask for your fear, and she sort of has that Mary Jane complex going on, where Mary Jane used to sort of just, be a party girl to not outwardly show her problems, and that's sort of Betty's deal, but with the fact that she's like this go-getting woman, you know what I mean? I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I thought all that was really well handled, and was really sad for Flash Thompson. I mean, I like that she is a strong-willed enough person that when she says, we're never going to get together again, she means it, and it's not going to happen, and it doesn't.
Yeah, and you know that it's not going to happen either, because that's sort of something that's in her character going back to, when she was dating Peter Parker. When her brother died, she never dated Peter again.
Yeah.
She was mad at him for a long time.
And what's really sad is it gets to the point where she looks at Flash and she sees his father.
Oh, yeah. And that's sort of the thematic thing that they played with the entire run. I mean, even the last issue sort of exemplified that for me, and that's why I love the last issue so much, where you see Flash sort of becoming his father and he pulls back.
Yeah, he realizes that's happening. And I think significantly, his father died issues ago, and I think that had to happen for him to get to that point. There's a certain sense of finality when his father dies, where they have a really good moment together, and you get the sense that they actually patch things up a little bit, and that there's maybe hope for the future. But he does it in such a real kind of way, where just because there's hope doesn't mean that there's not also a chance for backsliding. And because things don't go his way, later on, he starts binge drinking, and that sets the whole thing in motion. And I think that the fact that his father isn't there makes it even harder for him.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I mean, that's sort of what I thought was really cool about the last issue again, where Flash was sort of talking about how the idea of what a family is in America is sort of skewed and isn't really realistic, and it's sort of him saying that, like, you know, I had hoped that me and my father patched things up, but I can't help remembering how hard it was when we were growing up and sort of realizing, you know, the reality of the situation. He'd love to just imagine that he had an ideal relationship with his father at the end, but he doesn't really know.
And the way he plays it is so true to life, where he says that what makes it worse is all the times where things were okay.
Yeah, because he thought that he was coming out of it, and then he would just slide back into it. And that's sort of, I think, how Flash is beginning to view himself at the end of the story, where he's talking about how he's had all these bad times, and, you know, he's pulled out of it, and maybe he can make different choices, but if you look at the way his character's been handled, he's always slipped back into it, just like his father did.
Yeah, and not to get ultra personal or anything, but that hit home for me. I think we've all known somebody kind of like that.
Oh yeah, definitely. That's what I just found to be so interesting and relatable about this character. I mean, Flash Thompson's never a character that I've found to be all that relatable. In the 80s, sometimes when he was in that period where he was an alcoholic and he had the problems that are sort of addressed here, but I never thought I would have been able to relate to an alcoholic football jock.
Yeah.
And the way Remender writes him, he's just such a three-dimensional character. And when he first, and it's so ironic because when he first appeared, he wasn't that at all. I mean, that's one of the things, if you go back and look at the old Spider-Man issues, like, he's one of the most one-dimensional characters out of all the people that appear in the book.
And he's so what's great about it is that Remender makes it look really complicated, but from a story perspective, it's still the basic stuff that you need to really sympathize with the character. You have external conflict, you have internal conflict, and those two things are intricately related. That's how you do it. And it's not simply just, he's got a flaw, and so we're supposed to this like specific flaw that's constantly really conveniently thrown in our faces. No, it's much more real than that. And I think that we get this idea sometimes that as long as a character has something wrong with them, we're supposed to relate because that's real. That's not what we get here. It's much more complicated than that. But from a story perspective, it's not.
Yeah, and that's the sort of the backbone of what makes Spider-Man work so well when it's working well. And I think that's why I enjoyed this so much, is because I'm such a big Spider-Man fan, and seeing that sort of formula applied to one of the supporting cast members that I'm already invested in and love, I don't know, I thought that was really interesting. I was getting classic Spider-Man in a way that didn't have to break up a marriage and ruin the character.
And tied crazy into early Spider. You know, you're selling me on that now, because like I said, at first I was surprised by it because because I'm not as familiar with those early comics as you are. I've not read them all, and a lot of that I just know from reading about them. Right. And so, when I looked at that note and it was like, as seen in Amazing Number 11, I was like, really, we're going that far back? But the more you talk about it, you're selling me more and more on it. We should definitely mention that Cullen Bunn co-wrote some of this, and that he's coming in after Remender to keep writing. And I don't think any of these issues were just Cullen Bunn by himself. I think that they were co-writing credits. Did you see any point while you were reading when there was a co-writer credit that the writing seemed different?
Yeah, I don't know. There were some little inconsistencies in the Savage 6 arc, which I think maybe comes from Bunn sort of and Remender sort of working their relationship out and Bunn getting to know the character better, where there was sort of little motivation and questionable things that Flash did in Savage 6. Like, for example, one of the things I noticed when I reread this was there's a point where he rescues Betty from all the villains when they attack her in the cafe, and he's all about, in that part, he's like, all right, I got to get Betty safe, I got to get her out of here, I need her by my side at all times to watch her. And then as soon as someone tells him that his mom's in danger, he just leaves her on a rooftop in the middle of the city while most of the Savage Six could just fly up and get her.
That's a really good point. And then she gets kidnapped.
Yeah. I mean, like, and there's no way Flash could have known that the Crime Master was Bennett and then she wouldn't have been harmed. I mean, and the Crime Master had every intention of harming her if she didn't go along with his plan anyway.
Well, yeah, especially because he was so scared of what he would do to her.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't notice that. That's a good point. I think the dialogue in those sections is fine though. I didn't really notice anything that jumped out like crazy. So I'm hoping, I'm really interested to see where Cullen Bunn takes it and what ends up happening after that. There was one, and it's funny that I'm even mentioning this, but I just thought it was strange. I don't know if it was a typo or what, but there's this, when he finds his mom. Mm-hmm. In the Fly's lair, there's this part where he says, it's something like, "I've got to save the mom."
Yeah.
And it's his mom.
Yeah, I think it was a lettering issue. I noticed some little things like that as well. Like, there was one scene, I think it was around the same time, when someone said "I" instead of "I'm," or something to that effect. Yeah, I think that's a lettering issue. I don't even know if that has anything to do with them.
I mean, when you see something like that, or like a messed up contraction or something, you can usually say, "Oh, it's just a typo." But like, "I've got to save the mom." I just wondered about that. I was like, really? You put in an article instead of a pronoun? Okay. Yeah. But whatever. I noticed stupid crap like that. We're coming up on half an hour. Any other major stuff you want to go ahead and mention before we sign off?
I don't know. We haven't really talked about the artwork much. What did you think of the artwork in the later issues?
This is almost all Medina, right? I
think so. I mean, I think some of the issues before Savage 6 were fill-ins.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, there's somebody named Walker on 2 of them, 16 and 17.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure who.
He's a different guy, right?
I'm not sure who that is. What's that?
The last issue's a different guy as well, right?
The last issue is... Yeah, last issue, and I didn't even notice the last issue was different. It seemed pretty close, actually. Let me look again. Oh, actually, no, I don't know what I'm talking about. It's totally different. But I think it... Sorry, now that I'm looking at it. I think the reason I didn't notice is because it fits the material really, really well.
Yeah, I think the lineup of artists they got really suited the material.
I loved Medina. Just keep Medina on this book.
Yeah, he's really good with expressing emotion in body language and in facial expressions. So
with people wearing full face masks.
Yeah, exactly. I really like the way he drew the Venom mask too, because it looked really tight fitting, so you could make out the facial expressions better.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
I'll go this far. I didn't used to like this costume, and he sold me on the costume.
Yeah, I love the costume now. I can't get enough of this version of Venom. I'm going to go as far to say that Flash Thompson is my favorite person to wear the costume.
I can't go that far just because I'm a purist when it comes to Brock. I love it. I mean, I love Venom as a villain. I will say I miss Venom as a villain. Having said that, what more was there to do with him as a villain? So I will happily go back and read the great Venom as a villain issues.
Right.
And skip the minis, except for when we review and bash them.
Yeah. I actually have Lethal Protector, so...
Ooh, do you? We should do that one. 'Cause I have all of them.
Oh, wow.
I've got a Venom collection, yeah. That's why I started buying this in the first place, just because I collect Venom. But yeah, I've got everything, or almost everything. I think I'm missing bits of the old monthly that only went for like 14, 15 issues or whatever. But
oh, okay, cool. I have a bunch of other Venom minis from recently too, so maybe after this we can talk.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we should do that. Well, hey, everybody, thanks a lot for watching us talk about Venom, and we'll come back with you very shortly with something else. Don't know what yet, but maybe something old, maybe something new. We'll come up with something.
Yeah.
And we sure appreciate you watching. If there's anything you want to see me or Vince review on the Comic Book Vault, a trade or some singles or anything that you want to see us talk about, you can always send those to our P.O. Box. It's Geekvolution, P.O. Box 14183, Lenexa, Kansas 66285. We get mail all the time. We really appreciate those of you that send us stuff to talk about. Dan, thanks as always for being aboard.
Oh, thanks for having me. As always, it's a great time.
And we'll see you next time on the ever-sprawling Comic Book Vault. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Dan.